Hello everyone, if you'd like to see my adventures with the Lois Dress by Tessuti Patterns, stay tuned. Hello everyone, I'm Deb and this is DB Designs and Sewing Australia. Welcome to all my subscribers and welcome to anybody who is new. And today I have got an actual Lois dress made that I could wear without being obscene and without seeing my bra. So if you'd like to see how I went from this to my one made out of rayon. Now this is just a rayon that I got from Spotlight. It is actually viscose. When I looked at the end of the bolt, it was called rayon and it said it was 100% viscose. So in Australia, rayon is viscose, but there's all different grades of viscose, and this is quite a lightweight one and not the really beautiful quality like you get with the European ones, but great for testing because when it's on sale you can get it actually really cheap. Now you've seen the three versions. I don't even have a photo of the size 12, which was so small. I could get it zipped up, but I could not breathe. And it's seriously bursting out of the top of it. So then I went and I made a straight 14. And from the 14, I knew what adjustments I needed to make. So then I made another one in the calico in the 14 with the adjustments and decided I needed to actually adjust the middle under the bust that goes across your very high waist, like across your empire line, and made those adjustments and then made my final one in some rayon / viscose, and I'm very happy with it, really happy with it. So let me take you through how I made these adjustments. So this is my first one and it was the size 12. See, it's got a beautiful bright green zip in it, but way too small. Knew that, then decided I'd make the straight size 14. And this is the straight size 14. And when I had it on, I could see where I needed to take it to. This is how high I needed this point here. I needed it to be up here so that you wouldn't be able to see my bra. So this is a size 14, first try. So this is my size 14, second try, and I got this part to come up to where I needed it to come up to, and then found that I had this piece in the middle that was just poking out. It just, I guess it made the shape of the empire section of the skirt just the wrong shape. And so I knew I needed to take that piece out of the pattern. So I've got a little video first and then I'll take you through how I altered the pattern. Okay, so this is a straight size 12. When I looked at reviews online, it said it was a bit oversized. Clearly it's not oversized in the bust. My measurements were 14 bust, 12 waist, 10 hips. So I think the waist and the hips are fine, but it is so tight here. And you can see in the back, because you can see like all your bra through it, bra marks, that, and look at that, look at the way your boobs sit. Like, imagine if you had fabric that creased up when you sit down and then you stand up, you're going to have big lines under there. So when I look like that, you don't want a dress that you have to keep on pulling down all the time. I think probably the distance, I'm not sure, maybe that's what needs to be released. So the next thing I'm going to do, it's a very easy dress to make, really easy. And I've just whacked in a lap zip I had. You can see that it's electric green. It's one of those zips I got from Jack Stock in Moorabbin, and they were like 20 cents each. So my zips I have for students to practice with, practice putting a lap zip in, which is what you do way before you ever put an invisible zip in. But this dress has an invisible zip in the side. An invisible zip can be harder to do up, especially when it's going through a seam, which it will be here. So the next thing I'm going to do is make the straight size 14 and see how that looks. I'm not worried about from here down because you can take that in, let that out. It's really that it needs to fit here in the bust. The only problem I think I'm going to have with the size 14 is it's going to be really low. You can already see my bra in this. And you probably could do things, but then that's going to make it so that I don't think it actually does come under your bust. There's your under your bust. There's a bra wires. So I want to eliminate having that mark that leaves. And so I think making it less tight there is going to be the key to that. So I'm going to make the size 14 and then do a comparison. But it will be when I come back from Vietnam. But I am going to get this dress right. I am going to adjust it. I do not want to, which you could always do to anything, is make a bigger size and pull that in, stitch it together there, and that would be fine. But that's not the look I was going for. The look I was going for is to have this piece that comes up into a point, to have that meet the other pieces like that does there. You can see it there. And so I don't want to destroy that part of the pattern, because I have seen that other people have like stitched up the front or stitched this closer together. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted it to look like it's supposed to look. Yes, I want the V to be probably there. It is a low cut dress, and this is probably the style of bra I would wear, because I've got two bras the same as this, one in a nude color and this white one. So I want it to still be low cut because that's the idea of it. And I want to keep it in because it's quite a narrow V, and I think a narrow V looks really nice. So I'm going to make the 14, see how that looks, do a comparison, and we'll probably have to do a mashup of both. But in order to get this part higher, and I think it may need to come higher, and it depends how loose it is in the 14. That's what I'm going to do with this Lois dress. And so the first thing I needed to do was see what this distance was here, because that's what I needed to increase the bust by. So for it to land where I needed it to land, this is 3.5 centimeters. So when you've got your toile on, and you can see where you need it to come up to be comfortable, and that probably depends on your bust size. So when I'm looking at this, I drew on this while I had it on. So it was 3.5 centimeters, and I knew what sort of a curve I wanted on it. We'll endeavour to show you the alteration I made. You can see here I've raised that by 3.5 centimeters, and then I've drawn it back into where the size 14 meets there. So this darker line here, this is the one I've drawn in. So then I've just traced that off. Now the main thing is remembering that this is a centre front fold. It has to stay straight. Otherwise you're not going to be able to get anything on a fold if that bit is not straight. And so for demonstration purposes, I'm just doing the top section of the dress. and I'm making sure that stays on the straight. And I need to do it all the way across because we have to do that tummy adjustment as well. So now I've managed to hold it down. I know that the edge of my paper is on the center front fold, so that's going to be my center front. Now I'm going to start to draw in the lines. So I'm just going to be following this line around. So now I'm just tracing it off. Now I've got every sort of ruler you can imagine. You do not need to have all fancy rulers. You can freehand draw anything if you want to. And in fact, in this particular case of this curve, none of my rulers matched the curve that I needed to have. So I've basically hand drawn it in. Now this is a 6B pencil, so it's a really soft pencil, so it gives you a really thick line. I may not normally use that, but I wanted it to be able to show up on camera, so that's why I'm using such a heavy pencil. So the only issue you're going to have with changing your pattern is how many toiles do you want to make? Because to be honest, that's the main thing. You have to do the toiles or it's not going to work if you're going to be altering the bust. Let's see what we've got here. So this is the raised part. This is the original line that came with the pattern, and this is the new line that I've drawn in. So once we've done that, then we need to look at the alteration for the bust piece. So what I'm doing is tracing off the exact size 14. I do already have one, but I will trace this off again for demonstrations. It's not the full one, but it's giving us some idea. Now, if you don't have tracing paper, you can use unwaxed lunch wrap. Once again, making sure you've got the straight grain on here. It's really important of a piece that looks a little bit obscure to make sure you've got the straight grain. So this is just a trace off of the actual size 14 pattern. So now what we want to do is, when thinking about 3.5 centimeters, so this is the, for want of a better word, center front. And it's this section here, when we're looking at the pattern piece, it's this section here that's coming up to the point. So we want to take away that 3.5 centimeters that we added to the point. So this is your point here that needs to be 3.5 centimeters higher. So I am measuring 3.5 centimeters, which is here. And what we don't want to do is not give our bust enough room, because this is for someone with a decent sized bust, rather than, I would suspect the girl in the photo has got like an A size bust. So an A or a B. So if you're bigger than that, I'm sure you would need to do an adjustment. So I don't want to take off too much of it. And so I've drawn in a curve. So that's that heavy line there. And it's actually 3 centimeters and not 3.5, because I don't want to take away too much that your bust might fill out. And that's what I did to change the curve. And then I made the toile. And when I made that toile, which was this one, I realized that this bit just stuck out really badly. So to fix that, the darts are all the way over here and all the way over there. So this is not intersecting any seams. And it's just the actual center front part. And it's hard to tell with the size 12 if it was going to have that midriff, I guess, for want of a better word, issue because the dress was so tight. In the actual size 14, that was a straight size 14, I don't think it had the issue. So it will have something to do with lifting this part up and shortening the cups under there. Even in the straight size 14 that I hadn't altered, it still does not go like, it's not the sort of bust type that goes actually under your bust and sits like flat against your bra wires. It is not that style of dress. So it's always going to sit a little bit of the way up your bust. Something I never used to wear, but I have gotten used to wearing it now, because I even noticed that people that don't have much of a bust, that's the sort of style and look of a lot of dresses. I think the Ode to Stevie Nicks dress that I made, can't remember what its name was, actually had a bust like that. And then I decided that it was okay and that it looked okay on me. When I had a G bust, it did not look okay because it made the fabric stick way too far away from your body. Now I've just got like a double D or an E. That's in bra sizes, not in dressmaking. And so it's not as noticeable because my bust is so much smaller than it used to be, and maybe I'm just not as self-conscious as that. That's all people are looking at. And we've got our new, this is supposed to have the rest of the thing that goes the side seam to under your arm. But we've got this new piece. We've got our new skirt piece. So this is our skirt piece with this going up much higher. Now, when I did my actual one, I just taped some paper under the pattern that I had previously made for the 14 and adjusted it that way. But with the bodice, I had to make a whole new piece. So there are some shortcuts. If you have to add on to something, I just taped another piece of, I don't know if this is lunch wrap or actual tracing paper. I've got that many rolls of it everywhere, but I can't find the wide one. So when you need to do an adjustment like that, remembering it came up here like that, I just taped a piece under there and did my adjustment that way. But with the, because I needed to take off that piece, I traced off a new bodice because I don't want to start cutting up things that sort of worked even though it was low cut in case I needed to redo it. I need to be able to see the progression and the different way it looks, because none of this pattern has actually been cut out on the pattern paper that I got from Tessuti. It's all been traced off. So then you can overlay your tracings, because if you're not getting the exact right fit that you wanted, if you overlay your tracings, be able to see this one was too big, this one was too small, I need to go in between. If you can overlay them on top of each other, then you can see what you need to do. So we need to take this bite-sized piece out of the skirt. How are we going to do that? Well, the first thing I need to do is cut out my skirt pattern piece, or small amount that I've got there of it, with paper scissors, of course, because I want to cut down that dart leg Oh, and did I say, with the 14, I don't need to put a zip in it. So you would think that between the 12 and the 14, there wouldn't be that much difference. The 12, I could hardly get done up with the zip. It was so tight. And that's coming from someone that wears their clothes quite firm. To a 14 that I didn't need, even in the calico, I did not need a zip to get it on and off. So if you're making the Lois dress, I would suggest you do toiles. And I would also suggest that you try it without the zip once you've got your size right. So this is what we've got. Here's our dart, and I wanted to cut that so that I can alter this part where I need the bite taken out. And what I need to do is, from the centre front, and remembering 1 centimetre seam allowance, how far down is that alteration? All right, actually, it starts at 13.5 centimetres, add 1 centimetre for seam allowance, so that's 14.5 centimetres. So the first thing we're going to do is measure from the top here down 14.5 centimetres. Then we need to decide how deep this section needs to be taken out. So at its deepest part, it is 1.25 centimetres. And so that was in its halfway point. So if we go 1.25 centimetres, another 1.25 centimetres. So the reason I've done it like this is because, so we've got 3 markings, and basically we want it to do that. So when I say it was 1.25 centimetres, to get to the centre point here, it's 1.25 centimetres there and 1.25 centimetres there. So we actually need to take out 2.5 centimetres. So keeping this on the straight of the grain, and because my ruler's got grids all over it, I can see that. So here's the piece that we want to take out. Very, very deep here, going down to nothing at the leg. So I'm going to slash through the centre line of it. And so now I've taped it back together. You can see it goes all the way to the edge. Now this is only for if the same thing happens to you that happened to me, and everybody's body shape's different, so it may not happen to you, is that. But as you can see, this has made this front not as true to be on the fold as we would like. So you must true up your patterns. And so when you read something that says true up your pattern, what it's telling you to do is to give it back its straight grain. So to true up your pattern is to make everything straight again, make it all meet properly again. So when we look at it, we can see this is a straight line on this cutting mat. And look how far out it comes. It comes all the way over here. So we need to true this pattern back up. So if I use this mat, knowing that the grids on this mat are very, very straight and correct, because it's cutting mat, just going to tape that down ever so lightly to stop it from moving. So you can now see how different this section is once it's trued to the pattern piece. So because we took it up in the center, it's actually let it out further. Haven't altered the other part of the pattern that we made, which was the bust section here where that point comes up. But really important that you true that pattern. Now this is cut on the fold, so you have to true it. So it's always a good idea to redo your pattern piece, because technically you could lay this on the fold of the fabric and you'd be able to see how far off the fold it was and you'd be able to cut it out like that. But if you wanted to replicate the dress at a later date, it's easier if you've changed your pattern, because I mean, and I'm guilty of doing that too. I just wing it sometimes and just cut bits off, do all that, and then when I really like it, I think, how did I change that? What did I do? So that's how I altered the Lois dress. So let's just go through it. So the alteration I did was, when I was trying on the toile, I decided this is how far it needed to come up, because the fact that the dress fitted probably had a little bit of bagginess going across the midriff, but sometimes that can just be what calico's like. I don't know that I would have altered that had the bust fitted. So that was the first thing. We needed to mark that, see the distance from there to there to where our new point needed to be. Then drawn in that new line using the distance and giving it a nice gradual curve. And then giving the bust that same curve. Now you can overlay them on top of each other if you want to make sure the curve is exactly the same, but take into account that it has seam allowance in it. When I just hand drew it, it actually fitted together perfectly. So, but you will need to be doing toiles. Don't just cut into your fashion fabric and do that. Like I was using rayon that probably only cost a little bit more than the calico cost, but I still didn't want to use that fabric unless I knew that it was going to fit. So then we cut into that. And what that did, it was created in the midriff some weird baggy part, which is here, that needed that bite-sized piece taken out of it. So I measured down to where that piece needed to come out. The distance it needed to come out, made the other side so that if you folded it, it would have been just exactly the way it was on the dress when I tried it on. Now you will have seen when I tried that on and how I discovered that it needed that piece taken out. And luckily, this has got a dart, so you didn't even need to go to, it's not really a side seam in the Tessuti, the dart acts as a side seam, but it gave us a point. Let's pivot together. So, thus creating the little tuck in the front that we needed to make it shorter in the waist. Now that just might be me because I'm short in the waist, really short in the waist. So that just may be me. But if you need to do a trial to make sure it just doesn't happen to the pattern. And then we needed to true the front again. So when we true the front, we've added this bit on. Starting at the place, we need it to be exact, which is this top point. We need that to be, this piece is going to go in the fold. It has to be straight. There's no other way it's ever going to get to fit. So once you've gotten that far, you're almost done. Because once you've got your pattern piece right, this dress actually comes together really, really quickly. Now I could have made another toile, taking this piece out here. And if it was for someone else, I would have. But as it was just for me, and I was not going to let this pattern beat me, I didn't. But what I did differently. Now, it talks about the tearaway violin, which I know that people love. I always hear people talking about that and how good it is, but that's not what I use inside it. I actually use that iron, which is really just like strips of interfacing. And this one says, oh, it says it's on the bias in this one. And it does have a machine stitch down it though, so it's very stable. I've got all other ones. I've got wider ones that actually came from Tessuti Fabrics, and that is that wide. I think I just used the narrower one. I've got these ones, and that also came from Tessuti. So I've got a black and a white. And this one is straight stay tape from Tessuti. And it's 1 centimetre wide. So I've got that one. And then I've got this one, which is also a straight stay tape. So they're calling it stay tape, but it's cut up interfacing, really. That's what it is. So that's what I use instead of the violin, but I know that people love that violin method, which just means that you're stitching it on, and then before that section is completely sealed in, you're tearing it off. See if I can find an image of it. So this is what I mean by the violin. They give you the pattern pieces so you can cut your violin out. And then you stitch that on, stitch it on the fronts, of course, and the back bodice neck, and then on the skirt front, which will actually look like this when you open it out off the fold. You've cut into your little dark things there, and you've stitched your violin on, or in my case, I ironed my bias strips. Now it takes a little while to iron them on because I really wanted to make them perfect, and viscose can be shifty at the best of times. And there's a photo of how they tear it away. The only thing I'd say is I'm not sure why these armbands are cut on the bias. Is it because they want it to stretch upwards? I don't know. Because you can see they're sort of loose because they're on the bias that was stretched like that. I just don't know that it's necessary. It looks like that on the model, but it doesn't look like that in the line drawings. So if you look at the model, you can see that the cuffs of her sleeve, which is just an extension of the shoulder with a cuff on it, and the line drawings look nothing alike, because these look like they're a firmer band, and actually they're quite a floppy band. Yeah, so the one in the image is made of linen. And so it's not quite as floppy, it's a bit more of a stable fabric. But I think the one she has on in the image is rayon or viscose. Anyway, I don't know that I'd bother with cutting them on the bias. And I think the way they've put them on is way too fiddly. I stitched mine on and overlocked them. So mine looks like that on the inside. I did 3-thread overlock on it because I stitched it on with the machine, and then I top stitched them down. I top stitched them down so there's no chance of that sticking out or poking out, and it's got top stitching around the neckband anyway, and it's got top stitching down under the bust. This top stitching here is really, really important because otherwise I think this seam on the inside would be trying to flip up all the time to the bust, and it keeps this bit here down. And to ensure mine stayed down, I hand sewed that down as well. I just thought, can I see the corner of that? So I just put a couple of hand stitches in it to make sure. But really happy with the alterations. It's always going to be a low cut dress. It's a low cut dress on the model. And I know who else I've seen make one is Ruan, the Yorkshire Sew Girl. I think that's what it is, but people know Ruan. She's made one in a rayon. She's tall and smaller busted. So probably not unlike the body shape of that young lady who looks gorgeous in this, and Ruan's actually looked really, really good too. But hers was very low cut, not so low cut that you'd need to make a change to it. I know people have made changes where they've stitched it together at the front, but that's a whole different dress, a whole different dress. It really needs to have that bit looking like that, and there they are top stitching that down, making sure that seam allowance that's inside there is facing down towards the skirt. So I'm still unsure if I will use my Miss Moresby fabric to make this dress. I'm just wondering, with a low cut dress, how much wear I would get out of it. And I love that fabric, and I think it's called Miss Moresby's Neon Sea. Absolutely love it. I actually much prefer, having sewn this 3 times in calico and once in rayon / viscose, I much prefer the viscose floatiness of it. Okay, just check. The Miss Moresby fabric is linen cotton, and so being slightly heavier, I don't know. I think I would make this again, probably in a really bright coloured fabric. Rather, this is quite subdued for me, and I think I bought this with the intention of making a pair of like beach pants with it. I would make it again with all my lovely alterations, but I would also choose a rayon fabric or a viscose fabric or a lightweight fabric, a floaty fabric. I think it needs to float. I think it needs to not be stiff. Not that the Miss Moresby fabric is stiff, it's just not floaty and soft like a rayon is. So that's my adventures with the Lois Dress that I finally got done and I was determined to do. And I've actually got heaps of viscose, so I will make one at another stage, just not yet because I've got other really good things coming up, and I just used a new pattern and finished a dress Well, that ends the saga of finally making a Lois dress that fits and is not too rude to wear. If anybody's got any questions or needs any help, please don't hesitate to contact me. Now, if you needed to send me a photo of a toile that you've made and it's not working out, you can email it to me. In my bio thing is my email address. So you can email me a photo and say, which bits do I need to raise? What do I need to do? And I can try and help you through it. So for all those people that were waiting for this, I hope that helped you. At the end of the day, whatever you're taking up there needs to come off the bodice. So you're lifting the point of the skirt and you're taking it off the bodice. But let me know how you go, and everybody have a wonderful sewing week. I will be back soon with a new dress I have made, a new pattern company that I'd never heard of before. So stay tuned. Everybody have a great sewing week. Bye.